Thank you, Chris. Well, welcome to All Things Delegation. We're going to solve all your delegation problems in this next hour. I do not promise that, but I am here, your fearless coach, Michaela. Most of you know me. And then also here with Dr. Julie, Coach Julie. She is longtime hospital owner herself, now a coach with us as well. So she has lived and breathed delegation as well, learned the hard way, the easy way. And so we're going to dive into all things delegation. So I'm going to start with a quick, I'm going to share my screen. Before we get into the PowerPoint, this is kind of on the PowerPoint, but I want to go through, because last time we kind of did this with boundaries, where we went through and just did a quick, do you struggle with boundaries? Do you struggle with delegation? How many things of this do you answer yes to? We're going to go through this to start. So this is kind of like, you might have a delegation problem if. Number one, so see if you answer yes or no to these questions, what resonates most deeply, etc. So time management. Are you working significantly more hours while your team is managing a healthy balance? And feel free to throw in the comments any of these that you're like, yes and amen. Number two, you have a bit of a bottleneck behavior. You do projects stall when you're out of the office or on vacation. You have a do-it-yourself mentality. Do you find yourself saying, I'll just do it, rather than training somebody else to do it? Micromanager. Any of you been called a micromanager? Do you change or redo work that is already completed by a team member because it wasn't done your way? Do you feel like you maybe have trust issues? Do you feel anxious when you cannot see your team working, particularly in remote or hybrid settings? Do you feel like you always have to be watching them or on cameras or whatever it might be? Task level, are you spending most of your time on low-level routine tasks instead of strategic high-level planning? Team feedback, have you ever received feedback in a performance review that you need to delegate more? Moving on. Resentment, do you feel resentful that your team doesn't take more initiative, yet you rarely provide them with opportunities to lead? That mentality that everything is urgent, do you treat all tasks as high priority, preventing you from separating important work from mundane tasks? You're in the weeds. Do you feel like you're always in the weeds? Do you struggle to move from doing to leading? The 70% rule in this regard. Do not delegate unless you are sure the person can do it 100% as well as you rather than 70%. In a training trap, do you use the excuse there's not enough time as a way to avoid delegation? And that is often, I'd say, a big one. So any of those jump out to anybody off the bat? And I'm gonna move to the PowerPoint. Anybody want to quick unmute or say what they feel like is their watch point, anything they know out of the gate?
Anything anyone want to get better at delegating?
Aha, yes.
I'd say definitely that 70% delegation is something to keep in mind for me. I think that was something that I didn't really think about. So I like that. Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? threw it in the chat too.
Can you share the list again?
Sure. I'm gonna go through another one on the PowerPoint, but it'll cover a lot of the same things. Hold on here. These are kind of the nuts and bolts of all of them. That I'd say probably Julie, me, we all kind of hear a lot of is it's okay, I'll do it, because it just feels easier, faster to do it yourself. That sense of a lack of trust and a loss of control. Maybe you aren't sure of your team's capabilities, or just that sense of like, I want to do it, I want to keep it. That kind of fear is keeping you from delegating. That sense of micromanagement, because you tend to be more focused on how they do the task versus the outcome. And so, it could be a certain result can happen, but you want it to be done in a certain way, even though they might get the same result. You want it to be like every little step has to be every little step that you took as well. And you kind of get in the weeds with making sure you're always over their shoulder, doing it exactly right. You spend time redoing work, fixing, redoing tasks that you delegated. And this could be for a number of reasons. It could be because of the thing before of you wanted it to look and feel a certain way. It could be because maybe you didn't actually do a good job of training them. And so they kind of were set up for a bit of failure to begin with. There's unclear roles and bottleneck decisions. The team waits for your approval because there's a sense of like, I haven't fully been empowered to do this, trained on this. And so everything's kind of waiting on you. And then kind of similar to back to boundaries as well as the perfectionism, the people pleasing. We've heard this before. I think this was either on a coaching call I just had, or I think it was on our group call last time, was I don't want my team to be stressed. Like, I don't want to give them more work because maybe they're already stressed, when in fact, they haven't told you that they're stressed. You're just kind of assuming and wanting to like make sure everybody's okay and taking it all on for yourself. So I'm getting a combo of things. Definitely don't want your team to be stressed, micromanaging.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a combination of things. Not wanting to redo some work, wanting to make sure the clients are well taken care of, not wanting my team to be more stressed. I definitely think it's a combo for me.
Makes sense. Yep. I think it usually is for a lot of people. A few more just kind of physical and emotional signs and symptoms. You're probably feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, too much work, never enough time in a day. With that, you're probably burning the candle at both ends. You kind of just can't stop. You kind of can't take anything off your plate or delegate it off your plate, and more keeps adding to your plate. You're maybe experiencing a lack of quality time, meaning not quality time in a bubble bath, but quality time like doing strategic, work. Like maybe your work, you're doing all the work, but not your specific, maybe big picture thoughts or strategic thinking. Your task is huge, that list. And then of course, from all of that, you're mentally drained because the to-do list keeps growing. And there's also probably a lot of disorganization because, you haven't maybe trained people. So they're maybe have idle time, but you have all this stuff. You're probably a bit of a bottleneck. And so it's not creating this kind of flow to your day. Anything? Yeah.
I might
Anything,
say
Julie?
too, Michaela, that sometimes when you're in that kind of non-delegating mode and you're trying to do everything yourself, you kind of start feeling sorry for yourself.
Mhm.
kind of feeling like a victim of your own circumstance. I'm running this practice and I have to do everything. Nobody does anything. I hear that sometimes, like you get into that mode where you think you're the only one working and everybody else is, sloughing around and not doing anything. And you start to kind of like have a little pity party for yourself.
Yep. Which is a good, if you weren't on the boundaries call, that's the same with boundaries. I think boundaries and delegation go hand in hand. And so you can get that with boundaries too, feeling like everything's on you, victim mentality. Anything else, Julie, you would add to kind of this list, signs and symptoms, things you hear people say, kind of biggest struggles. And while she's saying that too, throw in the comments, kind of anything else that resonates with you all.
Yeah, I think the overwhelm, the struggling to get it all done, the thinking that you never have any downtime because you're always trying to do all the things. I think that is a huge sign and symptom. But also if you start resenting your team, resenting your partners, resenting, the people that work with you and for you, that could be a sign that you're trying to do it all. And you have a huge fear of letting anything go because what if they make a mistake? What if the clients get mad? And I think in order to be a really strong leader, you have to think about getting some of this stuff off of your plate so you can do a good job. Like you said, do your work to the best of your ability.
Yep. Really good. All right, moving along. So in a nutshell, what are we talking about when we talk about delegation? In the simplest form, it's basically you're giving someone the assignment, the task of both the authority, the responsibility, particularly the task, to another person that gives them the opportunity, the empowerment to act. Because I think what often can get missed is you give someone as well the task, you give someone the, hey, this needs to happen, this result needs to come, I'm giving you this. But sometimes they also need the authority, they need a bit of power maybe. And so that's something to really think about as well is, specifically what are you delegating and what does that entail for that person? Have you given them, as well as communicated to the whole team that, hey, this person is now in charge of this. They might be needing something from you. They might need your approval. They might need your help, whatever it might be. So the full team knows who has what responsibility and to what degree. And just as it says there, you don't have to do it all to do it well. And in fact, that would be true. If you do it all, you're probably not doing any of it that well. So kind of just a few, if you want just delegation framework, the fundamentals, right? We can't play zone defense, man defense, if we don't even know how to play defense, right? We have to have the fundamentals down. And so if you're kind of like, where do I even begin? I know I have ABC to delegate. And so kind of go through the who, what, where, when, why. Who am I delegating this to, right? Have you even identified the right person? Because a lot of times it's that you're just delegating it and you haven't really thought through, is this the right person? Do they have the right character? Do they have the right competency? Do I need to train them more? Have you truly identified the who? And then what? Do you have specific clarity around the tasks and expectations that need to be delegated? Do you have the what? Do you know what you're going to communicate to them? Do you have the clarity around what are the expectations? What is there a deadline with this? Is there something they need to follow through? Like, do they have all the pieces that they fully have, the clarity? And this would be a good thing to, have them say back to you a few times of what their expectation is of the task you've delegated them, right? So that you hear it. and are on the same pages that way. And if there is training needed, this is a big thing that often comes up. Will you make the time to train? And we hear it, it'll probably come up at some point too of like, I don't have time to train. And so it is a thing, a question where you do have to like, man, do we have to get creative? Do we have to come in 30 minutes early for a week? Because long term, it's going to save us all time, energy, and attention. So to really think about that training piece, and this is one too that I say, I often see is like, there's not often a lot of time and intentional attention to training. Like, it's kind of like, okay, follow me, come along. This is now yours, right? Like, okay, in a day, you got it tomorrow, great. There's not a lot of like very purposeful planning, intentionality, and like really taking someone through the process of, you could say like the leadership wheel, where it's like, you watch me do it, now you help me do it, now I watch you do it. Like sometimes it really needs to be that intentional with training. I see that gets missed a lot. The where, back to this, will you give them the authority and power to decide and act? This is another big one for those of you who have trouble like letting go and like, kind of want everything to be yours, to fully give away that power and authority for them to make decisions, for them to, be in charge of other people's results as well is a big thing. And then another thing that we'll get into more is the why, of course. Have you addressed within yourself the importance? Because I'm sure we can be on here, and why everybody's on here is like, we all know the importance of delegation. We don't want to get burned out. We want to, empower our team, but to really have your why and double down into like, I cannot keep doing this, right? And also the fact that it's like hindering your team from having ownership, having empowerment, feeling a part. So it's a lose-lose that we'll get more into. Let me just, Julie, anything else you kind of quickly add to that? I know we'll unpack it more, but anything jump to mind?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. There's a question in the chat about what if you don't have anybody willing to do it? And that's sometimes a challenge, right? Because people don't always want to take on extra tasks. However, I find that if you have that attitude of delegation and getting the whole team involved and getting everyone on the team some extra work, if they think of it that way, sometimes you can really get them to not necessarily always volunteer, but sometimes you can tell them that they're volunteering and get them trained. And a lot of times once they feel comfortable with the tasks that you're asking them to take on, then they'll start to see the value for themselves in doing more, having more responsibility for the hospital. If you present it in that way, that it's a privilege to be part of the workings of the hospital, and then the rest of the team will oftentimes join in. So if you can find one person on your team that is willing to take on extra and maybe start working with them a little bit on delegating simple things, then usually you can get the rest of the team to start to come on board, because they'll say, well, she's doing something extra, maybe I can learn something extra. I think sometimes it's hard to get volunteers when they're afraid that they're going to get micromanaged or that they're going to make a mistake, because that's the reason most people don't want to take on more responsibility. It's not that they're lazy, it's just that they're afraid that they're gonna
that's what I was going to say, Julie. It's that they're lazy.
Well, I've had some lazy employees, but then if they're lazy, they shouldn't be on your team. So they should be gone.
Yes, thank you. That was what I was going to go into, Kara, with your question. Was it could be worth it if you said your team feels like it's not their job, and you're kind of, to me, saying the whole team feels like it might be time for a big team reset of expectations. There might be some people who, when you say, hey, this is who we are as a team, these are the list of 10 things that, hey, raise your hand now, which one you want, because they're all getting divvied out, where you kind of do a big team reset of what's okay, what's not okay. And there might be kind of telling, some people maybe need to be voted off the island because of that. And so, yeah, that kind of is where my mind goes with kind of what you mentioned. But yeah, say more, Kara, in the comments, or we can get you on audio as we keep moving through. Julie, I'm going to kick it to you here for the next, and then keep your questions, comments coming, and we'll kind of hope to address it all.
Yeah, so the reason delegation is so important to leaders is because it is a responsibility of leadership. And it matters because of all the things that it can do for you. And if you don't delegate, what it does against you. So this list here, if we try to do everything, that's going to cause us to be stressed, overworked, burned out. It will spoil the efficiency of the hospital, because if you're in a busy veterinary hospital and you're a veterinarian or a practice manager, we all know that you can't do everything. So you have to delegate things. And I would argue that you're already delegating some things to your CSRs. They're delegated to answer phones and make appointments. You're already delegating some things, and it's very possible to make your hospital more efficient if you delegate more. If you're trying to do everything, you're interrupting your own workflow, which Michaela kind of already talked about. The patient care isn't going to be as high quality, and you're not going to have a life. You're going to be sitting at your hospital all night, running books and ordering drugs and doing things that you shouldn't have to do that other people can do. And my first practice that I worked at, when I started working there, one of the owners was running reminders. And it was in the old days where you had to send actual paper reminders. And he would sit at the computer every month and run them and put them in envelopes and mail them. And I was horrified, because I'm like, you're a doctor. Why are you doing this? And he was worried that it wouldn't get done correctly. So I quickly pushed him out of the way, and I took it over myself. And then as soon as I learned how to do it, I delegated it to someone else, because I knew that a doctor shouldn't be doing that. It's not something that a doctor has to do, is send out reminders or, call clients and book appointments. So if you delegate properly, your team's going to feel more empowered. It's going to act more like a team, because everybody's doing their part to keep the place running. There's going to be less stress and burnout for you as the leader, but also for your team as well, because the workload is going to be divided, and you're not going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off because you're trying to do everything. Your team will feel more like they own the practice, which is really important. If your team sees value in the place that they work and they feel responsibility for the place that they work, they're going to do a better job. If they are punching the clock and they think that it's just a job, you're going to have less of a quality practice. So you'll have better patient outcomes, and you'll have more time to do your job and do it well, and also go home and spend time with your family and take vacations and all the things that we all want to do to have a life. So that's why it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any questions about that, or any comments?
And I think, we kind of read through these and we're like, well, duh, obviously, but at the same time, you all and all of our conversations wouldn't happen if I think it is worth it to spend more time on thinking through why delegation matters so much and what it creates, because to really think about what is it costing you the times when you do everything yourself. And it's costing you a whole lot, because an empowered team is huge. high efficient, effective team is huge. A team that's engaged is huge. Like when you talk about, our next training on burnout, like, all of this matters a lot. And so to lean into like, man, how important is this? It's really important. And it might be right now costing you a lot mentally and emotionally.
Julie says in the comments that sometimes I delegate things, especially anything that I can that involves ProVet. It tends to haunt me later because inevitably I end up having to figure something out later when that person isn't available. Since I stopped doing that, I've forgotten how. That happens a lot, right? Like as a doctor, I didn't know how to run the urine machine in my lab. I didn't know how to run blood work. And so what you have to do in that case when you're delegating things, you have to have kind of a backup plan. Either when you first are training somebody, write up some policies of this is how you do ProVet. For example, these are the steps, and have a place on your computer where you can keep all the instructions for every task that you've delegated. And that way, when you forget later, if somebody quits or they leave and you delegated a task to them and now you can't remember how to do it, or you're out of practice or whatever, you've got a backup plan, either somebody else that knows how to do it or some instructions somewhere that you can go back through and refresh your memory. Because that does happen. As a leader, if you delegate a lot, there's going to be things that you're not used to doing. And, you need to check in once in a while and make sure they're getting done right. But also don't let that fear of somebody not being there and having to retrain someone or retrain yourself keep you from delegating, because you're going to save a lot of time even when this happens.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's what you mean, Julie, right? Somebody leaves and then you're stuck doing it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Unmute Julie, or throw your thoughts in the comment again.
Oh, yeah. Well, usually it's just I've been trying to let my main text not work every single weekend. So then I end up working with sort of like the B team. And then something happens and I'm just like, I forgot to do this, or like a credit note or something that's ridiculously complicated. But I've been trying to create protocols for just that reason, like screenshots and all that stuff. But it hasn't gotten done. But I've literally been trying to do that for months and it's just not happening. So
it's difficult when you have a B team, because you have an A team to rely on, and then there are people that are less trained or less competent.
Yeah, well, one of my team members quit, so I'm going to have an A person here on the weekends anyway. But in the future, we'll sell other people, so we need to have a plan. But
yeah, so maybe training multiple people to do the same things, so they have backups. Having a backup to the backup, it takes work to delegate, because you have to decide how you want it done, write up an SOP, whatever it is, to get the delegation going. So it takes a little bit of work up front, but it's worth it once the ball gets rolling, because then that responsibility gets taken off of your plate and hopefully continues to stay off your plate. And so, it is worth it, even though it is a lot of work at the beginning. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that you should delegate and the things that you probably don't want to delegate. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I've known, and myself included, some veterinarians, and a fair number, who have gotten themselves in trouble because they delegated too much of the important things in their hospital. So as a business owner and someone that's running a hospital, whether you're the hospital partner or you're the practice manager, you have to have a few tasks that it's best that you don't delegate. So that's why I wanted to put this slide in. So the things that you should delegate are anything that's repetitive, routine, anything a monkey could do, don't do it. Don't run reminders. I said to the doctor that was running reminders, I'm like, you could train a monkey to do this. Why are you doing it? So, no offense to your team by saying that, but just if it's something, I don't want to call anybody's team monkeys.
And don't say, I'm giving you this because a monkey
could do it. Yeah, don't say that. But the point is, if it's something that's routine and repetitive and pretty much anybody could be trained to do it, just do it. Just get rid of it. Anything that might empower your team to grow. Somebody has an interest in leadership. Somebody has an interest in education. Maybe they could train your technicians or train your CSRs. Find their interests, know your people and what they like to do and what they're good at. And then things that don't require your level of training. So if you're a DVM, don't be running reminders, don't be running blood work, don't be drawing blood if you can help it. And it doesn't mean that doctors are above that. It just means that other people can do those tasks, and then you can be freed up to do the things that only you can do, like surgery, prescribing drugs, going into the exam room to make money. You know, you have to try to maximize what you do with your time. The things that you shouldn't delegate, and I'll tell you why I say this, is I learned this when I first bought my practice. I went to a CE and a gentleman said, don't ever let anyone open your mail and don't ever let anyone sign your checks. Now, both of those things are obsolete now, right? Because we don't really get mail and we don't get checks, or we don't write checks. But the point is, if things are coming in the mail and they're like bills and now it's email, bills and things like that, you really have to pay attention to that. Because if you're not on the ball with the bills that are coming in and going out, or you have somebody signing on your bank account so they can actually spend money without you knowing it, or you have a credit card where they can buy things without you knowing it, you're putting yourself at risk for being embezzled. And I know a real good friend of mine who had a practice manager that she loved dearly. They were very close friends. And that person and that person's mother ordered a bunch of things on her hospital Amazon account, and they kept shipping it to their home. So for like years, she didn't notice because she wasn't paying attention, because that person was also paying the credit card bill and the Amazon bill. And so that person was able to order items, send them to her home, and then pay the bill without the doctor knowing it. And so that's the reason I say you should always, be on top of your Amazon account, be on top of your credit card bills, and probably pay your own bills. Go into your own bank account. And I know it's a little different for you guys because you're with Pet Vet and they have probably people that do that. But just as a general rule, keep an eye on those kind of things, because people will rob you. And I had one time my employees, and this was a weird thing, but they were going in and running their credit card and then taking cash out of the cash drawer to like an ATM. And they didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And so I don't know how long they were doing it. And I finally noticed, I'm like, why are we having all these like $10 and $20, bills that you guys are paying for your dogs or whatever? Well, they were getting money for lunch. But what they didn't realize is that now I'm paying credit card fees on that money that they're taking out of so they were basically stealing from me and not really know. And maybe they did know it, but they pretended like they didn't.
I think they knew it. They knew what they were doing.
They might have. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
that's what I mean by you really have to pay attention to those kind of things.
Yeah.
So anything that involves money, watch that closely. It doesn't mean you have to do it all, but it definitely means you have to keep your eye on it.
Yeah.
If there's a credit card statement, go through the statement. And if you don't recognize a charge on there, go to the person that bought something and call them to task on what they ordered. Make sure it's not getting shipped to their house.
We don't even see any hospitals on Netflix documentary here.
That's right.
But I think, with that kind of overall, if you go away from this and list out all of your like potential tasks to delegate, or just even all of your tasks, with that question of, is this the best use of my time and expertise? And how many of those tasks would you say, no, actually I could delegate, might be a starting point for a lot of you guys just to think about. So with that too, as we jump to the next slide, in the comments, or anybody have any thoughts, questions, things that you're like, I'm not sure if I should delegate this, or these are things that I for sure haven't delegated because, of that very reason, that, it's just a watch point, which kind of moves us into our next slide of things that, are important for you to do. And I guess you kind of already went over that. trust but verify, a big part of that. Anything more, Julie, you want to say with that?
I think it's just really
um,
something to think about is what is important for you to do as the hospital owner, manager. What are the things that you want to keep a close eye on? And then what is it that you can just let go totally and, check in every once in a while, make sure your inventory, you'll do inventory. But really make sure that you watch the money, because people are tempted when they see money coming into any business. It's tempting to try to figure out a way to buy drugs for their own pets, or like there's so many ways veterinarians can get embezzled. So you just have to pay attention is all. Not to be paranoid, just to be smart.
trust but verify.
Yep.
So kind of with that, keep your questions coming in the comments, thoughts, and we'll kind of hit on a few different, I'd say, underlying maybe root causes that I'd say keep people stuck in kind of keeping it all and not delegating. One of those is that letting go of perfection. And the mindset shift of that is progress over perfection, where, somebody kind of alluded to it, that, 100% of it needs to be perfectly how I'm going to do it versus like, okay, I'm going to give it to you and it's maybe 70% of as good as I want it, right? And maybe they can get to, that's part of it, right? They can get to that 100%. They're just in process of learning it and getting there and training and all that good stuff. So understanding that done well is better than done even your way or perfect, whatever that might mean. And so to give them growth for learning, for mistakes, when there can be opportunity for little mistakes, it's okay, right? That's how they learn. That's how they grow. Now, obviously, there's certain things that you have to make sure that if they can't have a mistake, that you kind of really train and work through, and that your team, again, you never grow. They're never going to feel empowered if you don't give them everything. And so letting go of that perfection mindset. Anyone feel like this is one they struggle with, keeps them stuck in holding all the tasks? Julie, any more you'd say to that as well?
Yeah, I think it's really common in our profession to have a lot of perfectionists, and it makes good sense because we're dealing with life and death situations, and so nobody wants to make a mistake when it involves a pet or a client. But it is a thing that we all struggle with, is that kind of idea that things have to be done perfectly. And something that helps me is I had a life coach say once, it's better to do B- work and have it out into the world than to try to make it A+, because then it never gets done. So, unless you're dealing with a pet's health, you probably don't want to think that way. But if you're thinking about doing other tasks in the hospital and you're delegating, if your team can get it to up to B- and it's looking pretty good, then eventually they'll get it close to perfection, but it may never be perfect. So just letting go of that idea that everything has to be done without mistakes, without issue, because it's impossible with humans.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely have this problem. Like when I'm trying to put an SOP together, I'm kind of held back by not having it perfect for, I think, two reasons. One, I don't want my team member to think I'm stupid or I didn't think about something, that would possibly pop up as an issue. But the other is if I'm training somebody, I want them to be trained right. So I think that it's like a double whammy when delegating, because again, I don't want them to fall into a pitfall. I don't want them to have issues, but at the same time, I don't want them to look at me and go, well, you're the one who came up with this stupid plan. But anyway, that might be just me.
Well, Robin, you might think of it as more of a collaboration with whoever you're training. If it's a new task that you're delegating, You know, maybe start with, I want to delegate this to you, but I'm not exactly sure how this SOP is going to eventually make sense. So maybe the two of you collaborating on it. And then when there are issues with it and you come up with well, this doesn't make sense to everybody, then we can tweak it or rewrite it or something like that. Going into it with the idea that, you know, I'm not sure how to write this SOP so everyone will understand it, and then having other people like collaborate will kind of avoid that a little bit, probably, you know, so you won't be putting it out there like this is the gospel and then there's a mistake that you didn't think of.
Yeah, I love that. The other reflection point I'd throw out is maybe it resonates, maybe it doesn't, is do you feel like maybe there's a bit of people pleasing that I heard you kind of say, of, you know, worried about your team or what they think? Do you find also like you're worrying about them in other areas beyond this situation, that may be more of kind of the root issue, is the people pleasing? Because it's like, well, I don't want them to think, or, you know, all the things that could, I think we'll kind of get into that more here, but
Kind
some,
of a fear of judgment.
yeah.
She's a little bit afraid of being judged.
Yep. So another piece, and we'll keep, if you have question, thoughts, just unmute and interrupt us. But a big thing is trust, right? Because you're needing to delegate, you're needing to release responsibility. And so you have to be able to trust them that what you're giving them is going to be done, maybe even just 70% to the effectiveness. But that is a big part of this is, you know, have you built enough trust with your team that you feel like you can give them the responsibility, you know, both and. Do you feel like you've seen enough from them? Do you need to kind of get in the mix with them more, that you do trust them to give them you know, ABC responsibility? And so that mindset shift is, I'm moving from the doer, you know, to more of the coach, to more of, you know, Robin, like Julie said, the collaborator, right? Where I'm not just doing all the tasks. And I think in general, I'd say Julie and I probably see this a lot with you all as doctors and PMs, that, you know, in the hospital partner doctor role that you've shifted to, you are now moving from just a doer to now you're coach, leader, mentor, and to really kind of shift your mindset of, now I'm leading my team, you know, through them, versus just doing it all myself. And to really shift that mindset of, come Monday morning, how can I work through my team as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, versus I'm the hospital vet, right? I do surgeries, right? I help do all the tasks. And that's a big shift. And my guess is, Julie, you had that in, you know, back in the day, you had that shift
Yeah.
from, now I'm leading my team and working through them.
I sometimes like to think of being a leader of a veterinary hospital or any business, I guess, as being kind of like a conductor in an orchestra. I don't know how well you guys know music, but if you have an orchestra, and you're the conductor, you can't play the flute and the violin and the drums, and you can't play all the instruments. And so you have to trust the people that are in your orchestra to do their job, but you also have to tell them when to do it and how to do it, and, you know, make them get louder and make them get quieter, and when to start and when to stop. And so if you can walk into your veterinary hospital and pretty much just do your job, and everybody else is doing their job, then it creates this really collaborative, cohesive orchestra of music. And you're just basically, when they're getting too loud, you're fixing, you know, whatever it is that they're not doing right. You're tweaking the conducting or the directing of your team. And so sometimes if you can think of it that way, it helps you release some of the responsibility, because you know that if a conductor got up there and tried to play all the instruments, it wouldn't sound very well. It wouldn't sound very good. But if you can trust all the people to do their job and kind of direct them in how to do it, and that's your responsibility, and when there's a problem, you help them. I think it'll make it feel less daunting and less like you're copping out, you know, because sometimes as leaders, we feel like if we delegate too much, then we're not doing anything, which is absolutely not true. We know that. But I think sometimes we feel like we have to do everything. So if you can think of it as I'm in charge, but they're all the musicians, they can all do the jobs. I'm just picking them up when they fall or when they make a mistake, you know, then it's then I have to jump in when something bad happens. But otherwise, I'm just standing back and listening to them do great work.
Yeah, I agree. I love that analogy too. I've not heard that before. I'm gonna steal that.
Okay.
Um,
I just made it up.
well, there you go. So kind of keep it moving and keep your questions coming in the comments as we kind of, so with that, you know, building trust, it does look like something, right? It looks like consistency. It looks like accountability. You're setting boundaries where needed, communication, a lot of feedback back and forth. Hey, this is working. Hey, you gave me this to do. I don't understand. Maybe you haven't communicated the why behind it. There could be a lot of issues with communication. And then progress, where you're normalizing, oh, actually, that was a mistake. It needs to look like this, right? And that's normal. They're not going to get it. You know, they're not going to bat 1,000 all the time. And so kind of remembering that, you know, you have to be consistent in your behavior and your follow through, seeking a lot of feedback. Hey, is this working? You know, if you give them 2 more extra tasks, check in 2 weeks, how it's going, check in a month. You know, hey, we're in the busy summer seasons. How are you feeling? Is this too much? We're kind of having that normal kind of follow through. So with that, we can touch on that. Julie can follow up on that. And then with that, so still tell us from you all, from maybe something we shared, something else that's coming up for you, what keeps you stuck in delegating? Do you
Michaela, to follow up, when you do a follow up and the team member says, yep, this is too much for me, instead of like taking that task back, do you have any suggestions on how to navigate that?
Yeah, I would always kind of dig deeper. What specifically is too much for you? Is it the specific task? Is it the fact that everybody else is a bit scattered and so they're becoming a bottleneck? Is it because they kind of don't feel clarity in what the outcome should be? So there could be a lot of things actually contributing to their overwhelm, that might actually be more of the root problem that you could dig into and solve, which would keep the task in their lap. So for sure, I would dig a bit deeper to find out what that is. The other thing it could be is you realize they're not the right person for that task, that it's maybe out of their strengths, out of their personality, where it is exhausting because they're just not wired to do that sort of, like, if you had me doing detail stuff all day, like, I would be exhausted. It would be too much. And so I would for sure dig deeper, Robin, on what is it specifically that they find overwhelming, exhausting. Julie, anything else you'd say to that?
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think really important when you're leading a team is to know who they are and what their strengths and weaknesses are. Because if you have somebody that really loves being in the lab and running controls and is just super detailed, then that's the person that you should delegate that job to, not somebody like me that hates to be away from other people. So if you kind of know the personalities, you know what their strengths are, that will help you decide who to give what tasks to. And they're going to do a better job if it's in their strengths than if it's one of their weaknesses. So that might be a really good question as you're trying to find out why it's not working for them. Try to see if it's a good fit or not. You know, I had one person in my practice, and she didn't like being with the clients. She didn't like talking. She didn't like being in the front, but she loved details. So she was always in surgery, always in the lab, doing anything that was minutia, even putting together chairs or something. If you get a new chair in the hospital, I always gave it to her because she loved it. And I hate that kind of stuff. Like if you locked me in a room and said, put this chair together, I'd be like, mm-mm. So, you know, knowing your people helps.
Yeah. Other thoughts, questions with this, fears that keep you stuck? What's your excuse? Okay, I know we're going to jump on coaching calls here in a week or two, talking about delegation, and I can hear it already. But Michaela, but you don't understand. So tell us now, for all to hear, what in your mind and heart right now are already like, oh, but I don't, it's too hard. Or throw it in the comments. Everybody's got mastered already. Look at that. All right. Well, what do you think on that? Kind of going from here, small steps, is just step one would be try the framework, get your list of, write down all of your tasks, all of the things, the little things, the big things that you're responsible for, and just to really identify what can be delegated. Like maybe you come away and you're like, okay, I have a list of 100 things. 50 of these can be delegated, right? But maybe you don't like, okay, how do I delegate all 50 Monday morning? But just to choose, I've seen it where people put them in categories of these 10 need to be delegated by, 3 months, these 10 in a year, so you kind of organize the list depending on the magnitude of your delegation problem, we'll say. So maybe it's just one thing. You're like, you know what? I know one thing that needs to be delegated this week. I'm going to identify who that can be, go through the list, how to have those conversations. And then you kind of move forward from there. So Julie asked, what if I have 50 things to delegate, but only 2 team members to delegate things to? They feel overwhelmed already. One, I would say, have they truly told you they're overwhelmed, or are you kind of just assuming they're overwhelmed? I would maybe, if they have communicated they're overwhelmed, that would be a good thing to go and have some one-on-ones with them and get feedback on what specifically is overwhelming to them. Is it, a team dynamic? Is it the flow? Is it certain tasks? Like what to them is overwhelming? So you kind of identify that, and then as well find out, like Julie said, find out for them, what do they love? Are there certain, hey, this is what I've seen of your strength. You tell me what on these tasks do you love? Do you want to do? And then from that 50 things that you mentioned, if you have, feels like many things to delegate, I would pick, you could either start with like the lowest hanging fruit, or if there feels like 1 or 2 that are like most overwhelming for you right now, seek to get those off of your plate, right? If you're like, okay, if I delegate this, it's going to free me up significantly in my day, in my week, and I can slowly move to the other things. But sometimes too, it's helpful just to start small, where you're starting to build that muscle of like putting things off your plate, realizing you're not going to die if you're not doing it, and you kind of slowly move that way. Julie, you want to add to that before, or any more that she said?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can add to that is that sometimes when people feel overwhelmed, it's a lot of their thinking that like they're too busy or there's too much going on. And sometimes if you can get them all together and say, look, these are all the things that we have to do in order to get through our day and help each other, and then start kind of deciding together as a team what you can all do. If they know that you're all feeling overwhelmed and you're trying to delegate things that make sense to make the day go easier and get something off of your plate so you can be more efficient, sometimes they're going to pick up that call because they want the hospital to run well. And sometimes just delegating some things from the leader will make the hospital run better and be less overwhelming to everyone, which sounds weird, but it's definitely true. If you're doing your job and they have their own jobs to do, and you talk about it as a team, like how can we make this more efficient? Sometimes the delegation isn't just handing them a bunch of crap and saying, go do more. It's more of a collaboration.
The other piece I'd add to that, with when you said it's the volume of tasks that overwhelm them, to maybe go back and confirm with them what are the top priorities though. Because a lot of times if it's the amount, it can feel like everything's important now, right? Everything's top priority. And then where do I even begin? So to really kind of in a day, hey, these are always priority. When we're with a client, this is priority. And if we don't get to ABC today, it's okay. But when can we get to it in the week, right? Or something. So that might be a piece, is to get on the same page of what is, takes precedent. What are my top priorities? My job, day in and day out, what needs to be done. And then you kind of maybe work from that way sometimes is helpful as well. So I know we're at time, and you all have to go delegate is what you have to do. And so I know whether you meet with me or Julie, we can definitely unpack this more one-on-one. We can do a little follow-up too in our next session on burnout, whether it's around a little more on boundaries, a little more on delegation. If you guys do have other topics or areas that you want to focus on, let us know, shoot us an email, and we can kind of tackle those at some point too, whether it's the next session or whatever. So any other last thoughts or comments as we wrap up?
Just
Very
remember,
helpful.
guys,
Thank you so much.
you're doing really important work. The world needs us to be healthy and whole. So pat yourself on the back that you guys are doing great work, because it's really important for you to remember that.
Good. Great thing to end on. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Take care of some pets.
Yeah.